Let's show you the highlights. Both teams seeking to start 4-0 in league play for the first time since the 90s. Georgia Tech seeking a 7-0 start overall for the first time since 1966. Late first quarter, Duke second and goal, the 1. Mishap on the exchange. Omar Daniels, thank you very much. 95 yards to the house. Longest fumble return in school history. And that one set the tone for a team catching points. This, for most of the week, was a 1.5 point spread, closed 3.5 at many sports books. 3rd and 3, just over a minute left to go in the half. Jake Taylor, first down, Blue Devils. Not the prettiest play, but getting it done. 3 plays later, Darian Mensah going for pay dirt. Landon King gets it, and Duke ties it up at 7. 16th passing touchdown of the season for the quarterback. Let's go to the 4th. 3-point game, 5 minutes left to go. Malachi Hosley spins off the handoff from Haynes King. Yellow Jackets now with a double-digit lead. 6th rushing touchdown of the season. Just over 2 minutes left to go. King faking the toss and keeping it himself. 28 yards to the house to make it 27-10. And they would go on to win 27-18. And Blue Devil fans have seen this before. Illinois about a month ago. Tight game at halftime. Outscored in the second half. Georgia Tech starting the season 7-0 or better for the first time since 1966. They went 9-0 to start the season then. And first 4-0 start in league play since 1998. Let's break this game down with Tom Fornelli and Chip Patterson. Chip, I'll give you first word today. Boy, talk about getting disrespected in the betting market from 1.5 to 3.5 to money line. What were some of the deciding plays and factors for you today in this game?
Failures in the red zone, first and foremost, and it started right at the beginning of the game, and it continued all through the afternoon for the Duke Blue Devils. I mean, this was an inability to get the tough short yardage, the inability to have good execution when you were a little bit farther away. You fumble the ball, it gets run the other way, 95 yards. I mean, that's a 14-point swing right there. You get other failures where you end up having to settle for chip shot field goals. I mean, this is just a Duke team that, in the words of Manny Diaz earlier this season, they are the architects of their own demise. You want to talk about the betting market? It's because Duke, and I am afraid that I'm using stereotypes right here, but they are computer trickers. They are very good down to down, and a computer that might not understand the back-breaking impact of red zone woes might think, hey, look at your yards per play. Hey, look at your yards per game. You're a very good football team. But that very good football team has had a really hard time when it comes to in the early part of the season winning the turnover battle, and then here in this game this afternoon being able to get those scores when you needed them, because Duke had great control of this game through 30 minutes, but the inability to score in those chances, that ended up dooming them when it came to the second half.
Yeah, when you look at the box score in this game, Duke outgained Georgia Tech. They beat them in a lot of key areas as far as the stats are concerned, but as Chip just went over, it was very, it was misleading because of those red zone turnovers. And I do feel like, I've been watching football for a very long time. When you march down the field that first time you get the ball, fumble it at the goal line, and then watch the other team take it back 95 yards the other way, typically means it's not going to be your day. And then later on, you see your holder botch a snap and you blow a field goal on it. So you get 2 really long drives, come away with nothing. You have 5 red zone possessions in the game as a whole. You only score on 3 of them. You get 18 points. It's very hard to win that way against a good team. And Georgia Tech is a good team. They're undefeated for a reason. They may not be the most elite team in the country. They might not be a top 10 team in the rankings, but they're a very strong squad. And I think that Duke, as Chip mentioned and Manny Diaz has said, they are the architects of their own demise. They do consistently shoot themselves in the foot. And this was, Tommy, as you mentioned, it was a lot like the Illinois game earlier this year. They did not have the overall same number of turnovers, but they had plenty of chances to take control of this game, and they refused to do so every single time, and it cost them in the end.
Didn't have it in the highlight, but special teams, specifically the kick game, field goal, mishandling, missed kicks, certainly led to what we see a box score 27-18. But as you guys talked about, a little more context to what we actually saw today out there on the field. So if you take a look at the current betting markets to win the ACC, there's about a 5-team race, but it's led by Georgia Tech, plus 240, slightly over Miami, who lost on Friday. Tom, I'm going to give you first word on this one here. Are you buying Georgia Tech with the schedule still ahead to win the ACC?
I'm not buying Georgia Tech to win the ACC. I am looking at that value that is now on Miami after Friday night's loss to Louisville, and I am running to get me some Miami at plus 260. I think those are very good odds. I still think talent-wise, Miami is just on a very different level. But you do mention that schedule, the fact that they're still undefeated, so they have the leg up, they have breathing room. They do have an inside track on getting to the conference championship game because the toughest game remaining on there, that's not a conference game. It's Georgia. That's an SEC team. So if they can get through Syracuse, at NC State, which has not been a very impressive team, Boston College, which was getting its doors blown off by UConn the last I saw today, Pitt at home. Like, it's hard for me to imagine this team losing twice in those final 4 games, which is what they're going to have to do to miss out on the ACC championship. So I do think there's good value there. I just think Miami's the better one.
Georgia Tech beat Miami last year. Georgia Tech can definitely beat Miami again. This is what I keep coming back to with this Georgia Tech team. It's, yes, Haynes King, who's been around forever and puts his body on the line, but it's Jamal Haynes. You know, it is guys like Eric Rivers, who came over from FIU. There are tons of players. Kyle Eford on the defensive side, big number 44 with the neck roll. They're old, they're experienced, and it just seems as though this Georgia Tech team, much like today, has just been finding ways to win, even when it's not like your perfect afternoon of football. This was like the road trip to Wake Forest, where they caught a couple of lucky breaks, yes, but we're just finding ways to hang in that game because as Duke was playing so much better and Georgia Tech had not gotten in a rhythm, they just kept showing up. And eventually, when they got their opportunity, they made the opponent pay because that's what good football teams do. That's what experienced football teams do. Brent Key has got a group that is without a doubt showing the resiliency that embodies their head coach. And that's why I would take them, you know, to at least be able to get it done against Miami if they do meet in Charlotte. Because what we saw from Miami, that was a team that didn't want to win. Louisville was trying to hand Miami that game so many times, and Miami didn't want it. Georgia Tech is a team that has shown us that if you let them hang around, they will actually make you pay. So I might take the Yellow Jackets in that case, Tommy.
So we're taking a look at the potential ACC CFP fallout via the Inside the Lines team at Sportsline with the Miami loss and the way Georgia Tech is trending, Chip, and I'll have Tom follow. How many bids do we think the ACC will get? Because I know for a long time they thought it would be just Miami, unless Miami was undefeated, going to the title game, and then lost. Then they would become a 2-bid league. Where do we stand now, you think?
The biggest game for an at-large scenario is how Georgia Tech plays at Georgia. I did not say the result, but I just said how Georgia Tech plays at Georgia. It's one of those late season games that's going to have a lot of attention and scrutiny from the College Football Playoff Selection Committee and how the Yellow Jackets play. And certainly if they win, will then deem their worthiness if they are in the ACC championship game. Right now, I'm going to say 2 teams from the ACC. It seems as though the win total and the lack of losses that might be there for Georgia Tech or Virginia are going to be just maybe presenting the committee with too many victories to ignore. However, if, for example, Georgia Tech does end up going in and getting just losing handily to Georgia, but making the ACC championship game, that would make it a little bit tougher of an argument. So I'm going to say 2 for right now, but I will say that from a perception standpoint, how they look against the Bulldogs in that rivalry game and the big body bends at the end of the year will be a deciding factor.
Yeah, I'm with you, Chip. I do think the ACC has a good chance of getting 2 teams in at this point. Like, we spent a lot of the offseason trying to figure out who this year's Indiana was going to be. Nobody asked who was this year's SMU. And I look at Virginia, and I think Virginia can be this year's SMU because, like Georgia Tech, like Miami, they're still very much in the hunt in that they have 1 loss or fewer. You look at their conference schedule from here on out, there are not exactly a lot of, heavyweights remaining on Virginia's schedule. So if that team, again, another one with a veteran quarterback, why does this keep happening? It seems like all the teams with old quarterbacks are good. But if the Who's are able to run through this schedule, and I think they've got a better chance than most people realize of doing so, you're suddenly looking at 3 ACC ACC teams who, by the time we get around to December, when it comes to putting in those final, rankings for the 12-team field, they're going to have 3 teams in the running. In fact, there could be an argument that the team that gets left out of the ACC championship could still have a spot in the at-large based on their record and their resume. So I think things are looking pretty good for the ACC, which is not something I expected to say a day after Miami lost at home to Louisville.
Right. So as a non-ACC guy, you say the last 2 years people think Clemson, Florida State, and Miami, and there's been so many wrinkles to what we've seen last year and already halfway through this season. Tom, Chip, guys, certainly appreciate it. Nice conversation here on the Georgia Tech victory at Duke. As you take a look at the Yellow Jackets' best 7-game starts, let me leave you with a Haynes King note. Second ACC quarterback in the last 3 decades with 3 straight seasons of 10 or more rushing touchdowns. The other, Lamar Jackson.